Hello again. Welcome to another edition of the Small Caps podcast. I'm Peter Capsanis. This week we continue our theme of ASX listed companies with overseas projects. And this week we're catching up with Scott Williamson, the Managing Director of Blackstone Minerals, which has an exciting nickel deposit in North Vietnam. Scott, welcome to Small Caps.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks to Small Caps for the opportunity. Great to be here on the platform, and looking forward to a good chat.
Look, first of all, Scott, Vietnam and nickel, it's not a common story you tend to hear about. Tell me about the Ta Khoa nickel project out there. Where does it lie? Paint us a picture.
Yeah, it's so we're in the north of Vietnam, just outside of Hanoi. So it's about a 6-hour drive due west of Hanoi. And Hanoi is a bit of a modern sort of Asian city, and a real growth area up there. So a big manufacturing industry, and a really one of Southeast Asia's biggest growth stories happening in Vietnam, and particularly up in around that Hanoi area. But you're right, it is an interesting location for a nickel mine. Unfortunately, we don't get to choose where Mother Nature puts these things, but we're really happy up there. It's a great culture, and some really good geology, some of the best geology we've ever seen, particularly for this magmatic nickel sulphide type. But most importantly, good people and good skills as well. So we've got some of the best geologists we've ever worked with on this project, and this is all local people. So we've got doctors of geology, locally trained and very competent, as good as any geologist we've seen in Australia. So we've got a great local workforce, a great skills and labour. But most importantly, we've also got some really good infrastructure, some of the best infrastructure we've ever seen. So we've got a hydro power plant, the largest hydro power plant in Southeast Asia down the road, so we can tap into very low power costs. So we've got some low labour costs that come with this very skilled labour. So it's we're very happy there. It's and like I said, we don't sort of choose these things, but really at the moment I'm probably happier up there than I would be in Australia, because I've rocked up there and I can actually get some stuff done. We just turn the rigs on and we get on with it. And that, unfortunately, in the Western world, is there's red tape and green tape everywhere, and that's really slowing us up. So none of that in Vietnam. We just get on with it. So yeah, pretty happy up there in northern Vietnam.
Surely, an unforeseen red tape in the wake of a global pandemic, being the coronavirus, that's surely had some kind of impact on the operations.
Yeah, it's a really interesting case in Vietnam. So the Vietnamese have had I suppose, a checkered past with China, and so as soon as that the I suppose virus was starting to bubble in China, the Vietnam were the first country in the world to put up their borders and say no one from China's coming in, and they did that back in January. So they got on top of this better than anyone, and so it's not very well publicized, but I believe Vietnam has dealt with this virus better than any country in the world. And so what we've seen is that they got on top of it early. Yeah, it's been amazing.
That's a big call, Scott. I'm not sure what Scott Morrison would have to say about that.
Oh, mate. So we've got a population of around 100 million people, and they've had about, last I checked, about 300 cases. And I don't think they've even had a death. And so at first you think, oh, those numbers can't be real. But then I've got the people on the ground that are saying this is real. We get on top of it. Everyone's wearing their mask. If there's an outbreak, it's locked down. And so the difference between a communist rule is when the government says you're not coming out of that area, you're locked down, then you do it. And so there's none of this, I suppose, going out and not sort of sticking to the rules of a lockdown. They do it because they listen to the government. And so they got on top of it. And I'd say the main effect it's had for us has been on outside of the country getting assays to Australia. Obviously, they need to be flown through Singapore, and so there's been some delays with assays. But yeah, in country, there's been internal borders similar to how we have in Western Australia. So sometimes our employees might be stuck on site for a little bit longer, and obviously we have to do the normal social distancing protocols. But yeah, business as usual for us, and Vietnam is back to normal today. So what we'll see is that Vietnam will still be a growth story this year. I think they're still expecting 2 or 3% growth, and it's because they got on top of it early. They're back to normal. It has not affected the manufacturing industry at all. So it's amazing, and it's a really interesting showcase of how good Vietnam can be when they are, I suppose, faced with a crisis. So I'm happy to say that Vietnam has done it better than anyone.
Well, you're right. It's definitely news that we don't hear in mainstream media in Australia or anywhere. Well, obviously, other things have dominated the news cycle at the moment, particularly in the United States. But well, if you say it's business as usual, Scott, I take it that you're drilling and you're continuing to explore. I understand you've returned some very encouraging drilling results, which you've announced this week at the Ban Chang prospect. What are the highlights associated there?
Yeah, so what's happened is through this last little period, we've started moving our drill rigs away from this very large disseminated ore body, which is called the Ban Phuc disseminated, and we've got this King Cobra zone, which we're continuing to drill. But now it's about really showing the market what the high grade potential of this nickel sulphide district is, and so we're now targeting what they call a massive sulphide, and which is potentially much higher grade. These massive sulphide targets are smaller. So the previous owners mined a 1.3 metre wide vein. They mined it for 3.5 years. It was 400 or 500 metres of strike, which is the length of it, and then they mined it down to about 500 metres. So we're looking for a similar thing that the previous owners mined, and it looks like we might have struck it at Ban Chang. So what we've done differently to the previous owners is we've got in and done the right science. So we've got the electromagnetics, we've got the modern geophysics, and the drill bit is hitting that massive sulphide within meters, maybe even centimeters of exactly where that geophysics target is saying. So the previous owners only did very limited exploration, and we're bringing in the modern geophysics. We've actually bought our own geophysics equipment. So we've spent money on the capital. We've bought our own drill rigs, so we can actually drill for as low as $40 a metre. So in Australia, that would be all in about $250, $300 a metre. Obviously, there's an exchange rate there, but we're drilling with our own drill rigs, with our own EM equipment, and we're getting it for $40 a metre, which is just amazing. And it's quite refreshing to be able to do our job and not have to run back to the capital markets to raise more money quickly, because we can just get on with it and go and drill out the ore bodies.
So that extends your bottom line for quite some time, I take it, Scott.
Yeah, so we just raised $6.8 million with a group called EcoPro. They paid a premium to the market during the virus period. We obviously got, I suppose, our share price struggled with everyone. They paid a premium, so they paid 62% premium to the market, $6.8 million. That can keep us going for another 12 to 18 months, and we will be continuing to drill that whole time, as well as move through the different studies and move this mine back into production.
You mentioned, I think, was it King Cobra, the other prospect out there?
So King Cobra, yeah. So that's a high-grade zone of the main ore body being the Ban Phuc disseminated, and that will be the ore body that we deliver the maiden resource on, and our scoping study is based on Ban Phuc disseminated and the King Cobra zone. So the King Cobra zone, we think, is a separate phase or a high-grade zone from surface, and we're just trying to chase that down at depth and see where that source of that mineralization is. So these magmatic nickel sulfides, they come from below. We haven't closed it off, so we're just going to chase it down at depth, and hopefully we find something that's even more high grade at depth. So it's some exciting geology. These are the types of ore bodies that create some of the best nickel mines in the world. So yeah, we're pretty excited about that King Cobra discovery zone and seeing, okay, well, where's this mineralization come from? Because it's come from below, so we just continuously drill at depth and then just keep chasing it deeper and deeper, and hopefully we find what I suppose they call the mother lode.
Yeah. So you talked about the maiden resource, and you've effectively got the Ban Chang and the King Cobra prospects all along that strip. What's on the horizon there in terms of mine activity? Do you see two separate mines with considerable timeline associated with them, or do you need to drill further?
Yeah, it's a good point. So we see that the Banfoot disseminated and the King Cobra zone is most likely going to be an open pit mine. These massive sulphide veins like Ban Chang are most likely going to be underground mines. So we've got 25 of those massive sulphide vein targets. So I could picture potentially we have a scenario where we have this large open pit in the center, which is right next to the existing concentrator. And then we have maybe one or two, maybe more, of these small little underground mines. And I like the analogy of the disseminated is the cake, and the massive sulphide veins are the icing on the cake. So they're not going to be a big part of the I suppose overall story, but they're going to add the sweetener. So they're the high grade sweetener that really drives the economics and potentially improves the amount of nickel that we can deliver to our partners.
It's the cherry on top, Scott.
Yeah.
The now nickel went through a magnificent boom in the early 2000s. What's the appetite for the product now? Because obviously there is a different appetite for laterite and sulphide. Is where the market's at for now for your product. Are you happy?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is a transition in the nickel market away from the stainless steel industry. So until now, most of the nickel in the world goes into stainless steel, and at the moment, only 5% of the world's nickel ends up in a battery. That will become around, we believe, 50% of the market will be pushed towards the lithium-ion battery industry. So that happens over time. That won't happen next year or the year after. That's going to take maybe 10 years or more. This whole lithium-ion battery industry EV revolution is really a 2023 to 2025 story. So what we're dealing with the lithium-ion battery industry end users, they're not too worried about what the nickel price is today. They're more worried about what the nickel price is going to be in 2023. And so they're trying to lock in their supply now and trying to access the metal for 2023 into 2025. We believe by that stage, which is when that real EV sort of takeoff happens, is when the nickel price will run, and it will run hard. So we're very happy that at today's price, we can make money at $12,000 a tonne. And 2023, I'll be very surprised if we have the same nickel prices we have today, because we know what's coming, because we're talking to the end users that are desperate for this metal. So we're talking to the South Korean battery end users. They have no idea where they're going to get this nickel from, and they are very worried about what it looks like in 2023, 2024, 2025. So there is a supply crunch coming. We're confident that the nickel price will be higher. We're not too worried about today's price because we will make money at today's price, but I'd much rather be making money and building the mine to deliver nickel into what's coming in 3 years.
How does that scenario from 2023 to 2025 impact on Blackstone's story and Blackstone's future mission? Are you solely focused on Vietnam, or do you hope to broaden the horizons?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've got this very strong relationship now with EcoPro. So they're the largest cathode manufacturer in South Korea, and so EcoPro have said to us, "Can you go and look for nickel sulphide?" So we've put this, I suppose, great little nickel mine on their doorstep, and we've said, "Let's go." The problem being is that they're going to need more nickel than I can ever deliver out of one mine. So there is an opportunity to once we've delivered the first mine, we go back to EcoPro, and I can almost guarantee they'll be saying, well, "Where's the next one? We need more, and we need more." So there's an element of them using us as their geological mining arm to access the metal to then deliver into the cathode, into the electric vehicle revolution. So there's no reason why we wouldn't do this again somewhere else. So the good thing about this opportunity is the previous owners have sunk over $130 million into the infrastructure. So they've given us a head start. So we're not starting from scratch. We're very happy with the geology. We think that there's no reason why we couldn't do this again. The problem being is it is so hard to find nickel sulphide. So the opportunity, we will find it very hard to find or see. We can't see anything else out there like this. This is a district scale opportunity with outcropping mineralisation. So we've got nickel at surface, undrilled, untested, unmined, within hundreds of meters of a concentrator. If this was in Kalgoorlie, it would have been drilled and mined 50 years ago. And so these sorts of opportunities don't come along very often. So we would find it very difficult to find a similar opportunity to what we've got here, but we obviously will continue to be looking as well.
I note that you are a product of WASM, the WA School of Mines, which is based in Kalgoorlie, Boulder, in WA's goldfields. So you've had quite an interesting journey from Kalgoorlie up to Kununurra, Ballarat, Queensland, West Africa, and now back and forth to Vietnam. You've also entered the investment banking space, from mining engineer to now, financier and CEO. So is this the best part of the whole journey so far for you as CEO and at the forefront of an small ASX listed junior?
Yeah, so I suppose we'll go back one step further. I started and I grew up in a little town called Geraldton, just north of Perth, and unfortunately, it comes back to, like, if there was a mine in Geraldton, I'd probably still be there. Like, unfortunately, mines are put in more difficult jurisdictions. So I ended up in Kalgoorlie, and I remember the day I was supposed to start moving out to Kalgoorlie, and I said, "Oh, I can't do this. I'm happy in Perth. I don't want to go back to the country. I've had enough of country life." My 2 years that I spent in Kalgoorlie, probably two of the best years of my life. I had such a great time in Kalgoorlie. It's a mining town. It's a real great. It's a great fun atmosphere and a real community there. And because it's so transient, the population is just so welcoming. And so I played for the Boulder Tigers, and we won premierships, and we had some really good times. And then, but very quickly, I got bored with Kalgoorlie, and then so Kununurra, and I've always moved around a lot, and I've moved from company to company, and I learnt a lot along the way. So I learnt different mining methods, different commodities, different types of companies. I've worked for the Rio Tintos of the world. I've worked for smaller companies. I've worked for mining contractors. So I've moved around the different parts of the industry, the different commodities, different jurisdictions. So I went up to West Africa with Perseus. So I got a real, I suppose, crash course in mining, and used that mining boom to really travel around Australia and the world, but also just to really get as much exposure as I could to the different parts of the mining industry. So, and then landed back in Perth, and I always wanted to sort of move away from that technical aspect. I loved the technical part of mining, but I was always intrigued about the finance and how does this whole junior space how do we play the junior space and the whole mining finance and that. So I landed a role at Hartley's, and that was a really, I suppose, another crash course in investment banking. Basically, I look at these small stockbroking firms, and there's no difference between a Hartley's and a Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs is obviously one of the biggest banks in the world. They operate almost exactly the same as your local stockbroker. So I got a very quick crash course in mining finance, and very quickly I realized I want to get back to mining, and I really enjoy the technical part of mining. But now my role is I suppose I get both. I get to really sink my teeth into the technical if I want, and I do, because I love it. But also, like chatting to the stockbrokers, I like the punting of mining stocks. I love punting mining stocks. So I get to do that, and obviously most of my punting is on my own shares, and obviously put a fair bit of my family's net worth into this investment, because I suppose as a mining analyst, I knew how to hunt value, and I knew that if you can look at a 12 to 18 months sort of ahead of the market, you generally will beat the market. So I believe that anyone that I suppose invests today and can hold for 12 to 18 months should be able to do pretty well with their Blackstone shares. So yeah, I can't see myself doing anything different now. I think that the only difference will be the level that the mining company goes to. So I might be able to I suppose, operate more mines and maybe less exploration, but the actual role, I think it's a great fit for my background, but also my personality.
Have you got what does your crystal ball tell you in terms of when you can get back to Vietnam on site again?
That's a good question. I'd love to get there as soon as possible, but what we've found is that I'm communicating with my team better than I ever have. We're using these modern, I suppose, platforms like Teams and Zoom, and so I'm very happy with the way that my company has transitioned to the new norm. Obviously, it's important that we have these strong government relations, but we've got a great in-country team that are doing a very good job there. So yeah, hopefully I can get there this year, but I'm not sure. Hopefully we've got one of these travel bubbles, or maybe, I'm not sure. But yeah, Vietnam, with only 300 cases, I would have thought that if Australia is going to open up to Asia, Vietnam would probably be one of the first to open up one of these sort of travel bubbles, and I'd be on the first plane up to Hanoi. Yeah, haven't told the wife that, but yeah, it's I'll definitely be up there straight away to touch base with the team and the government.
We won't say a single thing, just as long as she doesn't listen to the podcast. Look, Scott, thanks so much for your time. Good luck with everything at Blackstone, and we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on the future of Blackstone Minerals in Vietnam.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Small Caps. Looking forward to the future for Blackstone shareholders. Thanks, guys.